some cheese, cheap cheese, some tea, Chinese tea.
Well, you
Hi.
look like a teacher.
Yeah,
It feels like a
I'm in
lesson.
teaching mode.
You look very formal.
I've just come out of the garden, cleaned up, and now I'm a teacher.
Right, right. So long time no see, huh?
I think it's 7 years.
No,
Nearly
it can't be.
seven.
It
I
can't be
think it's,
7. Wait a second. 3. Yeah. Oh, wait. When did you leave Ukraine? Which year was
I
that?
think it was here in 2013.
Oh my
it was.
gosh, it's been
Yeah.
7 years. Could you tell me how you got into teaching? How come that?
How did I get into teaching? It was an accident, literally an accident. What happened was I was working as a draftsman. I was doing technical drawing for an engineering company, and I was starting to get a little bit fed up with that. And anyway, at the time, I was training for this bike race, and one evening after work, I had quite a nasty accident on my bicycle. I had a crash. I hit the road, and I badly broke my collarbone, quite badly.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and I had to go to hospital and have a metal plate put in my collarbone to hold it together.
I wonder at which point in that story did you actually decide to become a teacher?
Well, this is the thing, because I the following week I got made redundant, so I was basically operating with one arm, and I had no job, and I thought, what am I going to do now? And what I decided to do actually was go and train to be an English teacher, because I had a friend of mine who wasn't particularly academic. I'd helped him on his farm in the past. He was a farmer, and he said, look, if I can teach English, I think he'd been in Portugal for a couple of years. He said, if I can do it, you can do it. And I thought, well, I think I can do this. I'm going to give this a try. So I did the CELTA at the English Learning Centre in York.
You applied in many schools in different countries. So
yeah,
why did you choose Ukraine then?
Well, I've got a little sort of childhood story about this.
Mm-hmm.
It's connected with on my bookshelf here, this piece of rock actually.
It's a shell rock.
If this is off a bit of a tangent, you might have to edit this down a little bit. But anyway, as the house where I grew up, it's just in a little farming village in Yorkshire, and the house has this quite distinctive looking wall around one end of the house, and it turned out that this wall was built from this rock called Rakushniak, which you might have heard of.
Rakushniak is like a shell rock, am I right? Yeah.
Yeah, shelly limestone.
Yeah.
Which comes from the Crimea.
Right.
And this was rock that came back in the ballast of ships from the British war effort when they were fighting in the Crimea. And it had come back, and then they built this wall, and then they'd named the house Sevastopol House, right. after where the stone came from. So I thought, as a little boy in the sort of the mid-80s, I always thought, I'm going to visit the place where that stone came from one day. And obviously it was the Soviet Union, and there's a bit of mystery. What it's like life on the,
So you were destined to come to Ukraine. Yeah. It's a shame. Yeah. It's a shame you've never been to Sevastopol, though.
I have.
Oh, have you? Right.
Go, yeah. So, my first summer, I had a good friend, my girlfriend at the time, Natalia. We went down and stayed in Sevastopol. Yalta, I think we actually stayed in. And the nice thing there was that we were staying with a couple in Yalta, and we did an exchange. So they gave me a piece of another piece of Rakushniak, just that they took it from their garden. It had a little shell buried in it, and then I gave them a piece of my rock, which had been in England for 100 and.
Oh wow, that's very symbolic. The exchange of rocks.
Yeah. Exactly.
Right. So, how long had you been working in Ukraine before you left? You had
I
it
was,
for Spain next,
yeah,
right?
I
So
was
it's been
in Kiev. We worked together.
right.
Kiev. I was there 3.5 years.
And why did you decide to relocate then?
Well, I've noticed that after about 3 years, you went up a sort of a band in terms of experience. And a lot of schools, when I was looking around, were looking for 3 years of experience or more. So you sort of slightly higher up the pecking order. And so 3 years went by very quickly, actually. And I think it went 3.5 years in Kiev. But I'd been asking around in the staff room in Kiev. I was thinking, where am I going to go next? And on my short list, I had a few countries. I had Japan on the list. I had Syria, but this was before, the troubles in Syria.
Thanks God you didn't pick up this
Damascus,
one.
got to go to Damascus. And then I've also been thinking South America, sort of Argentina was on my list. And I just thought I would play it a bit safe and go to Spain, where I knew there'd be opportunities there. And one of my British colleagues, had suggested a town called Tarragona, which is about an hour from Barcelona.
That's great.
And so I looked that up, probably early in the year. And what I was also interested in was possibly buying a piece of land in Spain. And I'd done a little bit of research, and there was some opportunities around sort of in Catalonia.
To settle down, or for another
possibly
program?
Yeah, to buy some land and stay there and sort of teach as a steady income, and then have some land and be. A couple of months later, I went on TEFL.com, having this region in the back of my mind, and this school just popped up with a job vacancy, and it was exactly where I wanted to be. So I applied to them. Obviously, I had 3.5 years teaching experience on my CV.
What was that easy? Because Spain seems to have become a sort of mecca for English teachers, and that's why there is a high competition even among native speakers. So was it easy for you to get employed in Spain?
Well, I think I must have been lucky, actually. I suppose I applied there probably about this time of the year, maybe a bit earlier. And I suppose I got a good reference from the school I was working at. And we did an interview on Skype. I think it was the first time they'd ever done a Skype interview.
Was that stressful for you?
I think it was more stressful for them because, well, I think there was a problem with my microphone, possibly the same as it is today. And they were saying, "Why isn't it working? Why isn't it working?" So I could hear them, but they couldn't hear me. So I got off to a bit of a bad
Perfect for a spy.
But I think we did it on the phone. We did it on the phone in the end. And yeah, I was just in the right place at the right time. Moved to Tarragona, went straight from Kiev to Tarragona. And within about a week, I was teaching already, because they had a little summer course set up, probably about a month in June, July sort of time, where they had probably about 10 students who just wanted a little bit of probably a first certificate or upper intermediate, a little bit of that before the summer break. So I went straight into that, and that was great because I was sort of doing two hours in the morning with them, 10 till 12, and then I had the rest of the day to do whatever I wanted. So there's a little bit of pocket money coming in, and then it was great. It was fantastic. So it got me off to a good start there.
And if that was so fantastic, why did you leave in the end? Why did you move back to England?
Yeah, good question. So I did a full year in Tarragona. It was a good school. It was British run. It was a couple who were running, husband and wife, who were running the school, and it had been going, I think, 3 or 4 years. They'd probably started it at home, and then it expanded into some premises. But I didn't really settle there for some reason. I felt I don't know. It was I felt happier in a sort of in Eastern Europe, or more of a Northern European, Southern European. I suppose I'm a bit of maybe more of a morning person, and Spain was it was on a whole different.
Because there was no shell rock out there. So.
Yeah, it was the rock. It was the rock. I was near the beach. I was living 5 minutes from the beach. There's palm trees on the beach, fantastic beach. It was mostly deserted because then I was up before everybody else. But I just never settled there. And I think what I found is that when you're teaching, the first year is definitely the most difficult because you can't quite anticipate the questions you're going to get asked by the native speakers from that country. And the second year is always a lot easier. And I think after 3.5 years in Kiev, I thought, I know how to do this job now. And I was maybe a bit, a little bit blasé. And so when I went to Tarragona, which they don't consider it Spain, they consider it Catalonia. I went there and I thought, I know how to do this. And it was like starting again, almost. And a lot of things I'd taken for granted in Ukraine, like my students could pronounce English fairly well.
Right.
It was like, we're having classes in Spain. Their English pronunciation was quite poor. Had a lot of work to do.
Despite the fact that they were upper intermediate or even higher, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Upper intermediate levels.
Ukrainian students are known for being quite strong when it comes to language learning.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's what you, right?
What I put that down to was that Russian and Ukrainian is a really complex language. I mean, I tried my best at Russian over 3 years, and I got sort of, conversational. But it's a very difficult language to master with all the inflections and the grammar and everything. And I just think because you've got such a complex language, when you learn another language, it's easier for you to learn a second language. Whereas Spanish, which was easier for me to learn, they didn't have as many vowels in their language, and so it was quite hard for them to learn a lot of the English vowel sounds. Which, the vowels are the really important part of the pronunciation. So there's a lot of work to do there. It was a well-run school. It was very good, but there were just certain things that I'd kind of taken for granted a little bit in Ukraine, which were quite hard. I'd gone. I think the reason why I didn't stay very long, only stayed 1 year, 1 and a bit years at that school, was that I think it was kind of expected that teaching was your lifestyle, that you kind of you had to really live the teaching life. Whereas for me, it was a lot more of I teach during the day, prepare my classes well, but then the weekends I do my own thing. And I'd done this really nice month, sort of June, July, got a really good introduction. I thought I'm going to like it here. And then in September, I got my timetable came through, and they had me working on Saturdays. I got the Friday off, but then I had to work Saturdays, and obviously
they always do that with newcomers. No matter what experience you have here, you have to work Saturdays.
Exactly. The second year would have probably been better, and they were expanding, and they were taking on new teachers each year. But I thought, that got me off on a bad foot, really. And I kind of never really, because I wanted to travel and explore a little bit of Catalonia and Spain, which I did in my sort of half-term holidays. But I don't know, I just felt like, I only want to be teaching Monday to Friday, really. And so that soured it a little bit.
So you love weekends so much that having to work on Saturdays made you decide to leave Spain and go back to England?
Oh no, it wasn't that. It was the fact that I couldn't, I didn't get 2 days together. Right. If you've got a Saturday and a Sunday together, you can go and stay, go to Madrid for the weekend.
Anyway, you are not a teacher anymore.
I'm not at the moment, no.
At the moment, right. What's your current job?
So a couple of months ago, I started work doing something a lot more environmental, working with community gardens, that kind of thing, which I like doing. Particularly nice, in the summer. Maybe in the winter, I'll do a little bit more because I've retained some of my students. I still. It's awkward at the moment because we've got this this lockdown situation where nobody's really allowed to go out. So I'm very lucky that I'm not still a teacher, because I think I would have to be doing it all online, because I wouldn't be able to have people going
Right.
into their home, coming to me.
Unless you
So
use Skype, of course, or
yeah, I would
Zoom
have
or
to do
something.
Skype and Zoom like we are now, which would be possible. Yeah. I've now got a full-time job doing something else, but teaching was always there, and it still is, to fall back on if I want to.
Yeah, so it's easier because you don't have to think about things like recruitment and again, unstable income. So I guess that it gives you a sense of security and sort of control over
In
your
some
life.
ways, yeah. I don't think I could handle employing other people to work for me.
So having this bookshelf of yours, could you please recommend some books for students? Maybe you've got some reference books for teachers or so.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got a little selection of books down here that have served me really well through my teaching days. Of course, best one goes without saying, is Murphy. That's the first teaching book that I bought, and it's the one I always go back to for grammar. Sometimes I'm trying to find some good grammar exercise for my students, and I always go to Murphy. It's just the one. There's an advanced version and an elementary version as well, but that's the one. That's the Bible. That's the one I always go to.
Not only for learners, but for teachers as well, especially if you were not good at English, as you confessed.
Absolutely. I remember buying this during my CELTA course and turning to sort of Unit 1, Unit 2, present simple. What is that? I'd never heard of that before.
Oh, really?
Yeah, well, no, you just, you go to the normal school in England, you've got no understanding of what present simple is.
Many teachers and native speakers that I know didn't used to be good at English at all, and so it's irony that they ended up being teachers.
That's the way. Yeah, the way I look at it is that if I was a real natural at English, it'd probably be more difficult for me to teach it. These people who are geniuses, they can't teach because it just comes so naturally to them.
Right.
But because I have to sort of work at it a little bit, I'm not a very good reader. I'm not very good at reading, long texts. I'm quite good at just individual sentences and paragraphs. I still find reading a book quite hard work, which is why I like audiobooks. I've got a couple more books here. Yeah. Now, there were some really good books in the library at the London School of English in Kiev. I didn't take this from the library. This is one I bought myself. So this is the best pronunciation.
Investment.
The best, it's good. This is the best pronunciation book that I've ever found, Ship or Sheep. And it's really good because it's got a diagnostic test, which I used to give to all of my students who came to me. It's got a shopping list which contains all the sounds in the English language. So you sort of start off with number 1, some cheese, cheap cheese, some tea, Chinese tea. So this is collocations in use. And after I've been teaching a few years, I started getting more into chunks of language. Little phrases and collocations and that kind of thing, and trying to sort of, rather than having a million words to learning chunks and kind of more like building a wall or a
context,
from pieces, using bigger blocks of language. Another book that I've got here, and I bought this in Kiev.
I love it. Yeah.
This is perfect. A really good book. I borrowed this so many times at the school in Kiev that I ended up just buying a copy of it, and it's still got the price label on here. 201 Craven.
Well,
bargain.
That's a value for money, because that's a really good book indeed.
Yeah, I bought that probably
a must-have for teachers.
9 years ago. And what the good thing about this is, it's called 700 Classroom Activities, and it's got a really strange cover. It's just got like a cover of a flower bed, which has got no connection at all to the contents.
Well, it looks beautiful. Oh, probably there are as many flowers as 700, so that's
exactly. And don't judge this book by the cover. Inside, penguin readers. Really, the best thing to get your students to is reading books. And I'm not a reader myself, but short stories I can handle. And you know, these are all graded readers. So we're starting here at level 1. This is, you know, you could read this. You know, even somebody who's kind of lower intermediate could read this in a few minutes. And you're just building up their confidence. And you go right up to something like, I found a lot of these sort of slightly higher levels, level 5s. Sherlock Holmes is always popular with my students, quite interesting stories. And so you're getting up to sort of advanced level. And so I've got probably about 30 or 40 of these sort of things that I've built up. Always secondhand, just secondhand books, just for a few pounds each time. And so what I generally used to do with my private students was that they would read a short story in an hour at home, and then they would, at the beginning of the next lesson, they'd spend 10, 15 minutes just retelling the story in their own words. And I've, as a private tutor, I've never had a student fail an exam. They've always passed. I've had IELTS.
Good job.
I've got 100% pass rate IELTS. I had a Swiss guy come to me last summer to get ready for the ESOL, the TOEFL exam. My first time. Very bright guy, musician. We did 70 hours in about, I don't know, we think we're doing 15 hours a week. He passed the exam.
Wow. What advice would you give to teachers, to those pursuing a teaching career?
Well, I got into teaching partly because I lost my job. I was made redundant. And I think we're in that same situation again. I think there are a lot of people at the moment who may have just lost their jobs, you know, millions of people. And if there are teaching opportunities out there, teaching English abroad, go for it. Absolutely. I'm really glad that I did it. It really sort of widened my horizons. And as I say, I wasn't particularly fantastic at English at school myself.
Don't fish for compliments. I remember students praising you. So.
Well, I never heard that. Yeah, I don't know. Well, so definitely give it a try. The first year is the most difficult. Some tips that I would say when I was starting off as a new teacher, what I used to do, I had heard some students who would be talking about other teachers who were far more experienced. You know, they've got a Delta, they've got 10 years of teaching experience under their belt, and I hear this students saying, well, you know, he's a very highly qualified teacher, but I sometimes can't understand what he's saying because he's, you know, speaks very, very quickly. So what I thought I should do as a new teacher, not being very experienced, is just speak really clearly. And that really got me off to a good start. I sort of always tried to, particularly in Kiev, you know, dress smartly, polish my shoes, look professional, even if I didn't really know what I was doing. Spoke clearly, and I used to spend a lot of time preparing my classes in the first year, really a long time. But obviously, you know, second, third year, you get a lot better. But, you know, you don't need to be, a lot of my colleagues I found were quite literary people, you know, got a degree in English, love reading, you know, worked in libraries and places like that, and they're just real bookworms. And I wasn't like that at all, but you don't need to be a real, you know, reader.
So fake it till you make it, right?
Exactly. I was winging it. So.
Thank you for your time. Thanks for sharing your story, and thanks for the books recommendations. That's been really interesting and helpful. Thanks a lot.
My pleasure.